Hi, everyone. This is Ron Couming, and I'd like to welcome you to Success Secrets Revealed, the show that we created to help business owners and entrepreneurs learn secrets, techniques, and methods that other people who are very successful all have been vetted by me personally. But once you see who our guests are, you'll know that they didn't even need any vetting, right? So what I'd like to talk to you about, they're actually laughing in the background. I don't know if you can hear them. But today I want to first introduce the sponsors, then we're going to introduce our guests, and we're going to go forward from there. Okay, so our sponsor for this show to help business owners and entrepreneurs is RCS Online Solutions, and we help business owners and entrepreneurs attract, convert, and retain their ideal customers and clients to achieve even greater success using various internet marketing techniques and methods. But at the end of the day, you can have the best presence online, you can have the best marketing in the world. If you don't have the baseline, the theories, the principles to achieve that success, to get that material ready, you'll never be ready to get it out in front of people. And that's why I brought on some of the best and smartest people who have had tremendous success across the globe. Have you ever heard of Chicken Soup for the Soul? It's a small book. I mean, it's only sold like 500 million copies, right? Today's guest, one of our guests, we're blessed to have two guests, is Mark Victor Hansen, who was co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And how that whole book came about, the whole story of that is pretty much a testament to, stickability in following through. And we're also blessed to have his wife, who's also a successful entrepreneur. And we're going to talk to them about how they got to where they are, and then about this amazing book that they've put together. So please help me welcome both Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal.
We're elated to be with you. Thank you. What a nice introduction.
You, Ron. Yeah, so great to be here.
And most of it was on the fly, so if I messed anything up, I apologize.
No, you did a great job.
You were perfect.
Thank you. Where you guys calling in from?
Scottsdale, Arizona, sunny Scottsdale, where the sun shines and UV light kills viruses.
Nice, good stuff. We all need a little bit of that right now. Yeah. Unfortunately, here, and I'm right outside of Boston, Massachusetts, it's significantly overcast and was raining earlier, but it is what it is. Yeah. But, we can't allow, as, any entrepreneur and business owner, there's always things like weather and whether it's the environment, the government, or whatever's going on in the world, we have to stay focused to who we are. We have to stay true to our stuff and kind of like navigate that roller coaster of entrepreneurship. And Mark, you have had a tremendous career in Crystal. I'm just becoming to get to know you, and your history is phenomenal as well. Can you guys tell us a little bit about, most people are going to know who you are anyhow, but can you just tell us a little bit about your histories individually, collectively, and then we'll talk about this amazing book. Everybody stay tuned for the amazing book that they're going to talk about in a little bit, okay?
Well, in 1974, similar to the times we're in, I crashed and burned and lost $2 million in one day. Had to check a book of the library, How to Go Bankrupt by Yourself. After hiding out under the covers for 6 months and being afraid to take telephone calls because I was so scared, which some people are now, I suddenly said, okay, God, what am I supposed to do? In this book we've written now called Ask, The Bridge from Your Dreams to Destiny, said, ask yourself, ask others, ask God. I said, okay, God, what is my destiny? Because we believe everyone listening and everyone watching has a destiny. If you're alive, you have a destiny. Your job is to find it, to manifest it, to fulfill it. And success is the fulfillment of your destiny as far as we define it by asking. And what happened is I asked, okay, God, what am I supposed to do? Well, you're supposed to be a professional communicator and writer. And I thought, God, are you talking to me? Well, I was living in Hicksville, Long Island, New York, a little south of you, and went to my three roommates and at breakfast. And I said, any of you guys know somebody young that's not a professional speaker, that's not a cotton top, that's not a lawyer, doctor, celebrity? And said, yeah, I'm in real estate. This kid's older than you, but he's really good. And Hauppauge, Long Island, New York, I race out there, get there when he starts for 3 hours. He mesmerizes the audience. I ask, can I take you to lunch? He said, I love a free lunch. Chip Collins. And I asked him every question about how to do it. He said, look, kid, you're not going to make it. 1 in 1,000 chance you're making it. But if you stay out of real estate, which is I own here on Long Island, you do the life insurance business, a bottomless pit. I'll tell you exactly what to ask, how to do it. And I did it, knocked on doors, did 4 talks a day. I did over 1,000 talks a year for the first 3 years in the business. Only Tony Robbins and I ever did that much. And then everyone said, do you have that little story in a book? Met Jack, and Jack and I put it together as Chicken Soup. And now, like you said, we've sold $500 million of that. And then I sold a lot of other books because this is an entrepreneurial show. I just want to hit on, before we do ask, I did a book called 1 Minute Millionaire. And I said, I want to create 1 million millionaires. And everyone's got one right, easy, perfect, and acceptable way to make $1 million that is their unique transformational talent. If they just ask themselves how to do it, then we can all be rich. And we're the first time in history that can happen. With that, I will share the floor to my beloved, beautiful wife.
Yay! Go on, Crystal.
Well, I was going to let you comment. That was a lot to talk about, right?
It really was. And if I could, I'd like to just briefly, and then Crystal, if you don't mind. But one of the things I really liked about your story, Mark, is how relatable it is. And I love when stories are real, raw, and relatable. You came right off the bat and told us in 1974 you were facing bankruptcy.
I did go bankrupt.
All right, you were even worse. You were.
It was so bad. I checked a book out of the library, Ron, How to Go Bankrupt by Yourself.
Yeah, I love it. Like Les Brown says, I was so broke at the time I walked by banks and it set off the alarms. Right?
I never heard that from our buddy Les.
Yeah, he's amazing. He says he's great, and he also is real, raw, and relatable. But you talked about failure. You talked about bankruptcy. You talked about being in bed and depressed and wondering what to do and asking people, who is this? Who is that? Who can I go to? We've all been there, but you can't stay there, right? You've got to find a way to get out of that mentally and emotionally and to just keep trudging along. So I love the fact that you, A, shared that, and B, I think it makes people, because we see people who are massively successful, but that's who they are today. But oftentimes that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 35 years from when they started. You know what I mean? So, and it's all they went through that got them there. That might be just the last 5 years or something, right? So,
an instant success after 44 years.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Your overnight success, yeah.
Yeah, I have some friends who are like Alex Stern. He sold his business for north of $1 billion, and he'll say that, I'm an instant success. Yeah. It took me 21 years or something, right? And but anyhow, so that's great because it really brings home to people that nothing is like today or tomorrow. You got to work for a time. You're going to have ups and downs. So thank you so much for sharing both your successes, but also your failures, so people can learn from both. And Crystal, if we could hear from you, that would be excellent.
So of course, I'd be happy to share. So I think I'm going to start when probably my biggest personal crisis, because I think it is very important to share these things. Like you said, Ron, this isn't all easy, even though it seems like it might be for some people. But I was one of those kids who high school was pretty easy for me. So I graduated. I accelerated my curriculum and graduated at age 16. And married this guy 5 years older than me who, thought it would be wonderful if we ran off and got married. A couple of years later, I'm in a brand new city with a baby on my hip, marriage failed, I'm divorced, and I literally have no idea how I'm going to support myself. So I did the only thing I could think of, and that was to apply for food stamps. And when I went to the grocery store the first day, when I got those food stamps and I, with my little baby on my hip, and went to turn those over to the cashier, it was like time stood still for me. And this huge question just popped into my mind and said, basically, how did I get here? And another question followed that. And it was, am I really doing everything I can to help myself get out of this? Or am I taking the easy way out? And it was like, that just fell into my mind so quickly. And as I was turning over those food stamps to the cashier, and honestly, I'll never forget this moment because I was so convicted by the time I turned over those food stamps. I said, this will not be my future, to myself as I'm handing those over. And I used those food stamps, never applied again. But I went home and I thought, I need to ask myself more questions. How can I go to work tomorrow? What jobs can I find tomorrow? So I registered with temporary service agencies. I'd heard of Kelly Services. So I got registered with them, found out there were 2 other services agencies that I could register for. So I thought, well, I don't see any rules here that I can't register for all of them. So I did. Because what they would do is call you and give you a choice of jobs that you could do. You could say yes or no. So I thought, well, this gives me more choices. I started doing all kinds of interesting jobs. It was really actually very fun for me. I was working at attorneys' offices. I was setting up display booths at malls. I was doing, sales for like conventions and things that came into town. And I started to discover something about myself through that whole thing. I discovered that I really like business and I like sales and I was pretty good at it, and that I really like people and I love working with people. And so that led me to getting my real estate license. I went to real estate school, got the training, got certified, and went to work for the biggest home builder in our town. And so literally a year and a half after that moment where I was turning over my food stamps, I was working for the top home builder in our town. I became the #1 realtor. And I had also, in the meantime, people had said, oh, you should go do some modeling. So I went to some agencies and, approached them and said, hey, can you sign me? And it turns out I got signed with the bigger one in our town. And so I was able to do some television commercials, which when you do national TV spots, you have to join Screen Actors Guild, which was amazing because then I start getting these wonderful benefits for me and my son, and life just got so much better. And I often thought back of the contrast of my life, like what would the difference have been if I had just caved into my misery? Because I'm telling you, as easy as this sounds now, it wasn't easy. I felt like I could just keep sliding downward into that stuckness, into that place. But I realized at that point, those questions that come to our mind, we need to pay attention to them and we need to answer them, and we need to force ourselves to ask more questions. And for both Mark and I, asking questions has been so important to our personal journeys. And that's why, as we have this morning meditation every day, prayer time, and this is the first part of our day. That's what we do. And we realized what an important message this is to share, which is why we wrote the book, Ask, because we discovered there are 3 channels through which you need to ask yourself to keep navigating through life. And those channels are ask yourself first, ask others, and then, of course, ask God. And so we're super excited about the book. And, it seems to be touching a lot of people.
I love it. And again, your story is also like Mark's and much like mine too. It's amazing. You were a single mother, roughly, if I did the math correctly, at 21.
Yep, you're exactly right. Exactly right.
So you were a single divorced mother at 21 on food stamps.
Crazy.
And yeah, but so many people are there. I mean, my biological mother was, by the time she was 21, she had 5 kids, and we were all on food stamps and all that type stuff as well too. So, but you overcome it. Some don't and some do. I have brothers and sisters who are successful in terms of what they do, and I have others who are not.
Right.
But a lot of it's about mindset, and I think that's what's going to lead us into this new book that you've written, because you have a choice. We really have a choice. It's like Jim Rohn says, it's not what happens to us, because what happens to us pretty much happens to everybody. It's what we do with what happens to us. Am I correct? So,
correct.
I was born in the same projects, the D Street projects, as the other members of my family. I was on food stamps as well. You were 21. Divorced and single mom. And Mark, in 1974, I'm sure you were like 2 and and bankrupt, somewhat depressed. But you go on and you become successful. And I think so much of it has to do with mindset. So can you tell us a little bit more about this book? Because it seems to me like it's kind of like a bridge, or even if somebody's already got past the point of being lost in it, it seems to me like even if it's not a bridge for them, it's also going to help them going forward.
What happened, Ron, is that we looked at everybody that we know, and we know a lot of people because we've traveled around the world 250,000 miles. We've talked in 80 countries. We, talked to 7 million people. And what we said is we started saying in these morning meditations and prayer, what is it? Some people are super successful. Like you said, some of your families have done it and made that choice. Some have not. And by the way, I did do seminars around the world with Jim Rohn, so I love Mr. Rohn greatly. So I'm glad you talk about that too. But what we discovered is that there are a lot of people with talent and skills and ability, but the difference between those who just muddled along, and those who became super achievers in whatever dimension was one thing only: the ability to master the task of asking. You either knew how to ask and you did it with wisdom and prudence and success, or you didn't. The biblical line is ask and you shall receive, knock and the door will be open. We all know that, but no one has ever taught how to ask. So we said, first of all, we're going to write everything, because both of us have had, I've been number one 59 times on New York Times, according to what I read. I am the world's best-selling author, according to Guinness Book of Records. Nobody's beat any of my achievements, 500 million books plus. And then, we own a lot of very successful businesses, all because we did what this book said. And then ask the bridge. This is what I love that you hit on it, is the bridge from your dreams, because all of us have deep hidden dreams in our heart, and to your destiny, because we say, look, you're here. If you're alive, you're here to fulfill your destiny. And yes, all of us are incarcerated. All of us are in isolation. All of us are feeling frustrated. All of us are saying, come on, somebody ought to do something. And what we're saying is every one of us got some problem that we got to look at. And then we decide to fix it for us, and then expand the radiance of that to do it for everybody else. And we'll gladly go deep on that if you want.
Absolutely, if you could. And to me, it's amazing. And you said something about millions of people that you've been around or you've interviewed, or
for the book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, not millions, but we are blessed to be exposed to so many people across the world, and we always observe people, because people are amazing. People, what we found is they're over-endowed with talent, ability, likability, potential. But it's just like you said, it's what we do with it. It's what we choose to do with it.
Yeah.
And so what Mark and I wanted to share, this message is so important, because learning to be a great asker, what we call a master asker, is something everyone can do. It's not a complicated, it's not a 12-step program. It's not it is a really simple thing that we can all do. And when we learn to do it well, we can completely transform our lives. And literally, that's why we say it's the bridge, like you said, that bridge from your dreams that you have in your heart, because we all have dreams, even if we've become disconnected from our dreams, they're still there. And when we start asking, we can activate it, but we connect those dreams in our heart to our ultimate destiny. And it's such a beautiful journey, because it's almost like you can't get it wrong. When you start asking yourself, and then move to asking others for the things you want to know, help with, guidance, whatever. And of course, ask God, how does your life fit in the larger scheme of things, right? It's so beautiful, because your life, when you look backwards, you don't even recognize it. If you just follow that asking journey, and always we encourage people to document it. We say, write down your questions and the answers, and have a process every day. Spend 15 minutes every day minimum with yourself, asking those questions that will take you to your next level.
I love it. I love it. And I love the whole concept of the bridge, and from where you are to where you want and need to be, and just simply asking for help. I mean, sometimes people get so lost in the I can do it, or if I start to speak about it, or start to tell, or fake it till you can make it type stuff, that holds you back from truly being authentic, being who you are, and achieving the success. Because if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with a team, right? And so asking for help, reaching out, and listening, learning, and serving, you're gonna just do so much better. So please, I'm dying to hear more about your book.
Okay, so we wrote everything we knew about it, and then we said, well, wait a second, let's interview the best askers we know. And one of the guys we interviewed was Jim Stovall, and he tells the story better for these times maybe than anyone. He is an 18, 19-year-old kid. He's spent his whole life getting big, strong, fast, muscular, and he wants to be an NFL player. He finally gets recruited. The doctors check him out and said, look, kid, I'm sorry. 6 months from now, though, it's over and out. You're going to be permanently and forever blind for the rest of your life. I mean, the guy's spirit was just crushed. He's now self-incarcerated in a 9 by 12 room. He's got a telephone, a radio, and a television. And he's complaining, and his parents say, look, Jimmy, go down to the blind meeting. Maybe they can help you. Gets there, and all they're doing is complaining. And he says, I got this memorized. But he sits next to a woman who is a blind stenographer for a law firm. And he said, I used to love watching thriller movies. And I used to love seeing somebody throw a right hook. Somebody ought to do something about that. The pivotal question of what we're talking to you today is exactly this, what she answered. Wait a second. We're somebody. Why don't we do something about it? Here's the answer, though. They created, and sighted people don't know this, but it's called narrative TV. 14 million people watch streaming TV because blind people want to watch TV and see what the throwing a right hook looks like and seeing screeching tires. They have 14 million people paying $10 a month around the world that are blind. Now, that'd be great if that was all, but one of my friends calls and says, hey, you got to write the forward to this guy, Jim Stovall's book, The Ultimate Gift. I know you're selling 15 million books a year. You don't have time enough to breathe, but this is a book you're going to love. Well, I read it. I was wowed. I wrote it, and I said, this has got to be a movie. When we interviewed Jim Stovall for our book, Ask, The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny, what wowed us was he says, I now write movies. I now write books that I can't read, and I make movies that I can't see. How's that fit?
I think to me, that's amazing. And it's also, he is somebody who has not been, he got whacked. He got devastated.
Totally.
You know what I mean? This isn't like you're trained to be a physician, or you're trained to be a lawyer and you couldn't get hired, so now you're an accountant, right? This is like his entire world was just crushed, not just his physical going out there and wanting to be a football player, but then he couldn't even see anymore. Talk about a slap of reality. But he took that. I'm sure he was sad and stuff for quite a while, but he went on to utilize that and to contribute in amazing ways. And sometimes I get it on my on my TV too, and I will see that, and it will talk about somebody makes a face and moves to the side, or whatever it is, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not quite sure what I pressed or didn't press, but I know that is for people who are visually impaired. So kudos for him for both. What happened to him was devastating. He had every excuse in the world to, develop that victim's mentality, collect a disability, and sit at home and become bitter and angry. But he chose not to. He chose to thrive and not survive. And contributing to your book, kudos to him and for you to seek him out. I'm sure that there are many other people and examples in that book as well.
Well, there are. And it's just a great example of, being in a terrible situation. And rather than caving into that misery, it's so tempting to ask those questions, those tough questions, and answer them. And it's like that question is really there for all of us. Why can't we be the one? When Kathy looked at him and said, why can't we be the ones to do this? He wasn't thinking of it right then, but she thought of it. She asked the question, why is it someone else? Why do all of us sometimes think that it's not going to be me that does this? It has to be someone else. Why can't we be the one? That's something we can ask ourselves right now while we're all home. We have a little extra time right now. We're encouraging people to start asking yourself those questions. Why can't you be the one to do these things that you've wanted to do something different? What are those things that you've wanted to do for a long time? What excites you? What energizes you? Who could you talk to about that? Who's doing what you want to do? Maybe who could you learn more from? And what we found, with this book, we did a lot of research, Ron, and we found that, it's interesting. There are a lot of studies on people asking others for help. And in the studies, it shows that people like to help you. People want to help you. They're 80% more likely to help you if you ask. But all of us come into that thinking it's the opposite, thinking people don't want to help us, and we're scared to ask. We think that we're going to appear to be incompetent or stupid or inept or whatever it is, all of these fears, insecurities, unworthiness that we all carry, just because of life's experience beating us up and, pushing us down. But it's just the opposite. If we learn to ask, people want to help. If they can, they usually do. So getting comfortable with that is so important. And we have so many great examples and these beautiful stories in the book, just like the Jim Stovall story that Mark just told, of people who achieve great things by asking. And it's not like they started out with everything. They had to ask their way to success and illumination, because it's funny. It's almost when you ask a question, that's the only way that you can get to an idea or a solution or an illumination, solve a problem. You have to ask the questions of yourself and others and God.
I absolutely love it. And I think it goes back to kind of like a little bit of a mindset issue. Thinking instead of, if you can just change a couple of words, like like this situation, it didn't happen to us. It happened for us.
Yes.
I don't have to stay home and do this and do that. I get to stay home and do this and do that. If you just change a couple of words and change your mindset, and the outcome will first mentally and emotionally, you're no longer trapped by, you're no longer a victim of your circumstances. You now control it in whatever degree we have control over the universe, right? But that's huge, man. I love the whole story of what you're doing. Can you please tell us more about the book and whatever else you'd like to tell us?
Yeah, well, I love what you just said because, if we just imagine for a minute, a lot of us are thinking of this as incarceration and terrible, and we're so worried about the future. But worrying does nothing for us. Like there are certain things, you can do something. You don't worry about things you can't control. This is one of those things. So we might as well make the most of it and change our mental self-talk, like you said. What if, how many times have we said to ourselves, gosh, if I could just have 4 or 5 weeks off, I could really learn something new that I want to do. I could investigate something. I'd love to do this, but I never have time. Well, now we have time. What if we pretend this is just a big vacation, a time off that we've asked for, time off that's been granted to us? Forget about why. It has been granted to us, and think of it as a gift. Looking back, what would you have done to have 4 or 5 weeks where you could really focus on something new and different, that when we come out of this, which we will, how could you be better? How could you be improved? How could you have a better mindset going forward? So it's really important to think about those things. One of the other things I wanted to mention that we have in the book that's so important for people is the 7 roadblocks to asking. We found that through our research that everybody has roadblocks, unworthiness, fear, doubt, pattern paralysis. And we give some really beautiful stories about people who had tremendous levels of, at least one of those roadblocks and overcame it. And one of those people is Bob Proctor. We have that story about him. I mean, what a phenomenal success. If you don't know Bob Proctor, I'll let Mark talk to his story a little bit.
So Bob and I have owned 2 companies together, and Bob was in the Navy in Canada. He's now in his 80s, but still working hard and doing brilliantly well. But when he got out of the military, he went and was a fire person and making $4,000 a month and owed $6,000. So he thought that's a lose-lose. And every night the guys went out, drank, looked around the bar and said, these guys aren't going to make it. Back to your question about choice, he said, I'm never going to drink again. And he never has. Goes to the richest guy he knows, a guy named Ray, and says, hey, how did you do it? He said, well, what do you want? He said, I want to be like you, healthy, happy, and rich. He said, well, that's easy. You're asking the right guy the right question, so I'm going to tell you exactly how. So Bob kept asking him, and he said, well, you got to additionally read Think and Grow Rich, which I hope everyone in your audience has read. So Bob starts asking himself, well, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And he says, well, wait a second, you made money washing windows. So he exhausts himself and making a lot of money, going from 0 to 25 grand and 25 grand a month. And then he's falling asleep in the street in Toronto. And the police and the first responders are around him and ask, are you okay, buddy? He said, yeah, let me go. I'm just tired. I'll go sleep it off. He says to himself, he asks himself, wait a second, if I can't wash all the windows, I won't wash any. I'll get somebody. I'll be a manager. Nice. And within a year, he makes $1 million. And he starts making $1 million a month because he opens up windows in Toronto and Montreal and Atlanta and UK. He amazed himself, and he's still doing that. And the point is, every one of us has got to ask God, what is the dimensionality of my destiny? Number 2 is, what can I do? And number 3 is, who do I have to ask? Like he asked Ray, and that got him to go forward.
Right. And he talks about how the first half of his life, he was so dysfunctional because he said his self-esteem was so poor. He felt so unworthy. He would never ask anyone, forget it. Never, never, never. Until this one mentor came along in his life and, started asking him questions and saying, why aren't you asking for more? Is this what you really want? And he said, my entire world changed. My perspective on everything changed. my ability to recognize my own potential changed when I learned to ask questions.
So I would like to ask your audience I'd like to give them our Ask Challenge with your permission, Ron.
Absolutely, please.
Okay, so we wrote this book, but we didn't write it for us. We wrote it for you because we think everyone needs to become a master asker. And what we want them to do is go to Amazon.com. You all know how to get there because we've all had to live with that, right? And and go to books and get a copy of a book, Asked by Mark and Crystal Hansen. And then if you'll send us a receipt to what's scrolling across, reception@markvictorhansen.com, we are going to invite you to several things. First of all, the world's biggest book club, because we're creating it. Nobody else has ever thought of what we're doing. Wow. And that is, go ahead, tell them.
Well, we just think it's so important to offer this. When people get the book, we want to talk about the book. We want to have a discussion with everybody who sends us the receipt, said, I got the book, and we'll invite you to, it's going to be like a private live book club discussion. So how fun will that be? So we can really chat about how these things fit into our lives and how it's relevant. So that's going to be really exciting.
So that's A. And then B is, some people came to us and said, well, wait a second, I want to buy 100. I want to buy 500 for my university. Yeah. For everybody graduating, wow. At Life University, we want to give one. For everyone at our church, we want to give one. And went, holy cow, well, we got to do something special for you. So anyone who buys over 100 of our books gets two things. They get a whole day with Mark and Crystal seminar in magnificent Scottsdale, Arizona, when it's safe to fly again. And that's going to be soon because of another product we got participating in. And then number two, and after that, they get to come to dinner, a private dinner at Mark and Crystal's house with us. We're so excited because we want this to be a big book that really sources and serves to bring out the magnificent, to bring out the opportunity, to bring out the choice that you said, to bring out people saying, hey, wait a second, I can promote myself. I can take self-initiative to action. I can be something better than I am, no matter what my chronology, whether I'm young or old.
Exactly. I love that. Doesn't matter much. I mean, there are so many people that we can talk to, whether they were black, white, Spanish, male, female, born to drug addicts, were drug addicts. They were rape victims. They were born as a result of rape. Oprah Winfrey's she's publicly talked about that, right? And so many others. Think about what the world would be without them. But also they, in addition to what they have done personally, if they have done it, and you might not become the next Oprah Winfrey or the next Ben Carson, right? or whoever these people are who overcome every challenge that, most people would use as excuses. But it means you could too. You might not achieve that level of success, but if you're above, if you're paying, if you're making 2, 3, 4 times what you owe every month, your family's healthy, you're not, there's different levels of what success is to each individual, right? Not everybody needs, $40 million, although not too many are going to say no to it, right? But, everybody has a different barometer to success. So I just love personally the entire ideology and stuff. And I want to ask you a couple of questions, Mark, too, but I want to make sure we focus on the book Ask. So please, talk more about that as much as you want.
One of the people you just brought up is one of our closest friends, Candy and Dr. Ben Carson. Ben, his mother, is the 22nd kid of her family in San Diego. She is 13 years old when she gets pregnant with Ben. Nobody will hire her, so she goes to Detroit where she screws nuts on the tires of cars. Has no money, no real education, and Ben is failing in school in 3rd grade. So she said, look, little Ben, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the bookmobile every week and get 2 books. You're going to write up a book report, and she couldn't even read, and she would circle it, she'd highlight it, she'd star it. She thought pretend to correct it. He thought she knew what she was doing. From 3rd grade to 4th grade, he went from the bottom of the class, top of the class. I'm going to fast forward. He ends up at Yale, head of his class, wants to be a pediatrician, a pediatric neurosurgeon, the toughest of tough, because you're working on little babies. And goes to Johns Hopkins, and there are 400 applicants, and they're only going to accept 2. And the guy was a racist and was going to kick him out. So he's playing Mozart in the background, and he's sure that this kid only is going to know Motown music, and he's going to put him down. Well, he comes in and starts talking about Beethoven. He spends 3 hours with him. Ben gets in. He becomes the top guy, does 15,000 pediatric neurosurgeries perfectly, including separating 2 twins, which some of you saw the movie, and I wrote the endorsement to the book called Gifted Hands. If you haven't seen that on Netflix, you want to watch it, by Dr. Carson. He is a genius, but he came out of nowhere He's just done such marvelous, magnificent things. He gave us the Spirit of Excellence Award last year, where he gives scholarships. I want every kid or every parent with kids from 4th grade to high school, listen, every kid that does really well academically should apply for the Carson Scholarship Fund. You get $1,000 a year, you get a sash, you get to hear somebody like us speak. Every year he gives them away to 8,000 kids in America, because he said, look, you go in every high school, they got sports memorabilia, but nobody brags about how smart kids are. We need more intellectual. I mean, you're living in the Athens of America, as you know, in Boston. That is the new Athens, they call it. Maybe you don't know that, but I expect you do, right? MIT, Harvard, Boston University, and all those prestigious places. Anyhow, Ben.
I've almost been barred from Cambridge, though. I'll be honest with you. I drive by there, right? Just to not to totally change the subject, but just a little flash of reality. I drive by there, and people have a 10-foot tall fence, right? And then they have a sign on it, and the fence goes all around their house, right? And then they have a sign on it in 3 different languages talking about how everybody is welcome and we should have open borders. I'm like, where do you get this? Yeah, my girlfriend who lives in Cambridge, right? She says, please don't post that. I have to live here. I'm like, but you can't make this up. They got a 10-foot high wall surrounding their house telling people that we're wrong. You know what I mean? Everybody's welcome, and we shouldn't have a wall of borders. Right. But they have one.
Right, exactly. Tear down your fences. If you really believe that, tear down your fences and take off your front door. Come on.
Yeah, by the way, if you want to know about how important borders are, just ask the American Indians.
Yeah, true. They had better borders, right?
Yeah, they had better borders. But so just back to what you were saying a moment ago. I mean, people, no matter where you came from, it really doesn't matter. You are not endowed with your talents and abilities from other human beings. So it literally doesn't matter. You're endowed by the Creator with all of those things, and it's really just up to you to make that choice on behalf of yourself to really discover your talents and abilities and exploit them. And it doesn't matter. I mean, everybody does something different. You could have a flower shop. You could be, the best supervisor somewhere. The important thing is that you're contributing to humanity with your special personality, with your special smile, with your special gifts and talents. And success comes in so many variations, just like I love to compare it to flowers. If you look at all the flowers in the world, how can you pick? They're all beautiful. They're all perfect. A hydrangea, a rose, or a daisy, or a snapdragon. I mean, they're all so unique, and that's like humanity. We need all that beauty, and it's all special and unique. So we just want to encourage people to take the time to read this book. Ask yourself those questions, because we know some real internal breakthroughs will happen for you if you do that.
I love it. And can you give us the name of the book again and how they can buy it and stuff? And then I'd like to ask a couple additional questions.
Absolutely. The book is called Ask. It has a very bold cover on it. So when you go there, you see it, Ask with an exclamation mark. The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny by Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Dwyer Hansen, my beloved, beautiful, brilliant wife. And it's got stories that'll just take you to places that you want to go. We promise you, because we've tested on a lot of people. And we do something no one's ever done before, because everything we do has got to be unique. It's got to be transformational. It's got to be inevitable. And we think the story that starts this is called Makayla, which I give all the plaudits and Cato. It's her opus story that you got, a fable that you will love reading when you start this book. So it starts different than any book, because you say, well, self-help action book told me to do this, this, this. This fable will get your mind elevated to places you didn't know you could go.
Wow. And right off the bat, huh?
Right off the bat. Well, just really quickly, we say we give you the fable of Makayla to open your heart and mind to the journey of asking, because when you tell a story, it has the effect. Stories are metaphors, in our lives. We can take those stories as metaphors, and metaphors are patterns, and our brain thinks in patterns. It learns very quickly through patterns and through experiences. That's why stories are so powerful. But it starts off with Makayla. This is set in the times of kings and queens, and she has lost all hope. She's lost her home. She's living in this grove of trees. And her job is to go to the rock quarry every day and dig rocks and put them in the cart, load the rocks and take them to the right destination. And so she is literally at the bottom of her world. And it's so symbolic of how many people feel right now. And that is, life is heavy. It's like loading rocks in a cart every day and pushing them somewhere. And so one night, Makayla comes home back to the Grove, falls exhausted into a sleep, and the being appears. And he takes her on this journey and gives her the message to ask and never stop asking. He shows her this beautiful sparkling bridge and says, the secret to life is asking it, to learn to ask and never stop asking. So, but it goes on and on and on, where her life, when she starts asking herself these questions, being curious about life, being curious about other people, starting to recognize and notice other things around her, her whole world just starts opening up incrementally. And it's really every man, every woman's story. So we're so excited to share that beginning in the book.
I love it, man. And that sounds to me like a great way to even start a book or anything in stories and fables. That's how we basically connect with people. And that's how we, instead of comparing, we actually identify, and so I love all that. Mark, if I can ask you just a couple of quick
Anything
questions.
You want, sir.
I know about the first time I met you was about 4 or 5 years ago. I don't even know if you remember, you know what I mean? I was just one of many people, but you had spoken about different inventions. I mean, the level of like entrepreneurship in what you're working on in other realms is just, I sat there and I listened to you, and you talked about how boats were out there and they were making electricity from waves, and that there was helicopters doing this, that, and the other thing out on oceans. And I was sitting there and I was like, wow, you know what I mean? Can you talk to us a little bit about innovation and technology and where you think the world's going? And we'll definitely close again with the book, because I know it's coming out soon, but I want people to know that there is so much more to you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, Chicken Soup was enormously successful. We sold it for a whole lot of money. We're deeply thankful. And in graduate school, I'd been with a guy who got 15 doctorates at Harvard, 40 major books, great inventions like geodesic domes, spherical buildings made out of triangles. But Bucky said, look, we got to make the world work for 100% of humanity. And you got to have green, clean, sustainable energy. Now, we're going to need oil for the next 20, 30 years, and it's going to be cheaper than ever for a short time. So like the president says, we ought to buy a lot of it and store it if we can figure out where. But long-term, we need to be on wind, geothermal, tidal, solar, and hydrogen. And Crystal and I are both, clean on that. So we invested $1 gazillion in a company called NPC. I want everyone to go to naturalpowerconcepts.com and watch a video. Maybe you can type that in addition, naturalpowerconcepts.com, and watch our videos. We've got urban wind. Nobody's ever thought of that. We always see the big windmills with 37-inch blades in each direction, right? But we have little pop-up windmills that go 360 degrees that are mechanical, that fold down if there's a hurricane or there's a storm, and they never throw a blade, and they supply enough energy for a house or a city or a military forward encampment, and that. It just is so cool. And we integrate it with wind, and we got a thing called Wind Charger. We integrate it with solar, and we are able to turn and cost effectively make hydrogen, which is one of the right battery energy storage things that's going to change the world, because you got to have energy to make enough water. Water is hard to make and hard to move. It's heavy. It's 8 pounds a gallon. And then you got to be able to desal it. Then you got to have water to have food, and food to have fundamental abundance. That means you got to write out the whole NPC thing. I think NPC alone won't probably make it, Ron. It's got to be naturalpowerconcepts.com in Hawaii. If you don't mind my asking you to edit one more time. So what happened is that got us into a marketplace that we never knew we were going to do. And every day people bring us inventions. Like yesterday, somebody brought us an invention that's a mask that's made with tourmaline nanoparticles that is probably going to be the future of what we wear. Now, we're at the front end of it, but it's interesting because we're going into an interesting time in America. So once we were in the energy business, we said, well, we'll start a company called NPC, Natural Power Concepts. Then suddenly we had EcoWorld Technologies, and we have all these people bringing us stuff to make H2O and purify it, because how many kids die a day of bad water?
5,000 kids die per day of bad infected water, polluted water. It's so sad. It's tragic.
And so for the first time ever, we have our little So we started doing all these kind of technologies. I can go deep on any one of them. You asked about what's called pulsating wave technology. This genius guy named John Petrie, and if you look up John Petrie artwork, he's a top living surrealist artist after Salvador Dali. But he is a special ops guy in the military. He's our close dear friend, lives in Oahu. Has invented 250 different patented and patent pending devices. But one is pulsating waves, because everyone else thought waves go up and down. Well, he's a windsurfer and a body surfer. I said, no, waves go 7 different directions. So he figured out how to not only have it pulsate and make energy, but also spit out all the salt and then self-clean it and go into deep ocean current so it didn't build up and kill all the fish in that, plus turn it into energy, plus have enough pounds per square inch. I may be going too deep here.
Trash to cash too.
Yeah, ascending. The next business we're part of and advisors to is a company called QCI in Michigan. And what they're doing is I've put the label on it so everyone understands it, trash to cash. This is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar business. And I'm teaching now that we're going to do 50 trillion, not billion, 50 trillion. This is going to pay off all our national debt over time during this decade from 2020 to 2030. And what this guy has said, spent $300 million over the last 20 years. His name is Dean Rose. He and his engineering team have figured out how to take every landfill, and we got 10,000 places filled with garbage. Every one of us make 5 pounds of garbage a day, whether we know it or not. And it's got to go somewhere, and it's wrecking our water. It's poisoning the water. So we'll be able to pull all that landfill. And what we're going to get out is clean, pure water. We're going to put metal back to metal, fuel back to fuel. And the most important one that most people think about nowadays is plastic back to plastic, because plastic didn't exist before 1950s. And that's when landfills started. And we did a little landfill, 20 mil plastic. And I'm not beating on all the garbage people. They are brilliant. They do a great job, our refuse people. So I'm not complaining about tipping or anything. I'm saying we got to take all those resources. Back when I was in graduate school, I wrote 10 goals that I wanted to do during my lifetime. Just like Elon Musk wrote his 10 goals, I wrote mine. I didn't know him at all. Still don't. But I admire him greatly. But I wrote down, there's no such thing as a bad resource, just a good resource, misunderstood, misplaced, and not doing what it was supposed to be doing. There you go. Perfect. And so what I'm saying is, Crystal and I are dedicated to, Bucky Fuller gave me the languaging, but to make a world work for 100% of humanity, make us physically and economically successful so we can go on to the higher levels and dimensionality of our own mind by asking.
To me, that you had me, I was sitting here watching you and listening to you, and I was like, that is like, and you said you had 15 doctorates?
No. I got 10 honorary doctorates so far.
Only 10. I'm sorry.
Yeah, only 10. Yeah, she's getting, by the way, one of the
doctor I can call, but yeah. I don't have a doctorate. You know what I mean?
I love that.
In fact, I might even have 2 doctors I can call, but I don't have 10.
Well, there you go.
None of them are MDs. They're DCs, PhDs, DDs, Doctor of Humane Letters, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Wow. But what you're talking
about. And I'm very honored, by the way. I'm thankful. Don't misunderstand. I'm very honored.
Yeah. And but and we are so grateful for people like you. I mean, what you're doing, what you're helping people with their everyday lives, with the books, and getting over mental and emotional things that will keep them back and hold them back, but also on a much larger and global scale, which most people can't even comprehend. I mean, the geek in me, I sit there and all of a sudden I'm like, woo, I love it, right? And but you know what I mean? It's like trash to cash and the plastics. I mean, and thank God for people like you, because we're creating a whole host of issues. We need people who can help us get out of them.
Can I tell you one other book that we've written, and it's amazing, but we've written another book, and we don't have a picture of it here, but it's called You Have a Book in You, and we've done You Have a Book in You seminar, and if they go to the reception at markvictorhansen.com, they'll get it. But Crystal and I believe, and we love writing, and we're both pretty good at it, if you'll forgive me for being self-braggadocious, yeah. But books are fun. Books can create wealth. Books can be a credibility. Books can be a legacy. Books can go into history. Books can literally change the world. I mean, when my favorite president was Abe Lincoln, and Abe Lincoln, honest Abe, and I was born in Illinois, and so we all had to memorize his story, reading by candlelight, all that stuff. But he read Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, and he went, "Oh my God, people shouldn't be slaves." So he wrote, because of that one book, he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, and he started freedom, which I want to help with Crystal finish emancipating people, because there's a lot of people that aren't emancipated. We've gone to China for 22 years up until 3 years ago. They got over 1 million slaves there. That's not okay. And ancient Greece was built on slaves, and Rome was built on slaves. But we got to get rid of slavery. And what's going to translate it, one of those 7 things, is robots, cobots, and 3D printing, all of which are part of that $50 trillion, which what we're saying in our book, Ask, is everyone's got to ask themselves, how can I participate in this? And there's a gazillion ways. It's unlimited because they're all brand new. That we're at the front end of the fastest growing, most exorbitantly, exponentially accelerating economy in history once we're open again. And we're going to be open for business again, we believe, in a very short time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be in a short order. And a lot of the stuff like this board behind me has some stuff filled into it. And that's how kind of like we were. But we're coming out of here. A lot of things are going to have like a blank slate. So, so we're going to have kind of like a blank slate. So it's like your future is your choice. You know what I mean?
Totally.
What you just said is correct. Everyone needs a whiteboard, and we've got an electric whiteboard because we write so many ideas and somebody gave it to us. But everybody's got to repivot. They got to reinvent. They got to rethink, right? The spiritual line is be ye transformed by the self-renewing of your mind. You've got to think anew and say, well, wait a second. It doesn't matter what I haven't been, haven't done, haven't thought, haven't thought. Where do I want to go? What do I want to be? Because all of us will come to an end. And when you're at the end, you look back. You never regret what you did. You regret what you didn't do. And what we're saying with our book, Ask, is that you're incarcerated here to rethink it. Because if you look through everything in the Bible, everybody had 40. Moses had 40. I can go through all the guys. Jesus had 40. All of them had 40 days, which means time of renewal, time of many, time of rethinking. And we're saying, hey, wait a second. Let's pedestalize that to say, hey, wait, you got a magnificent destiny in front of you. And yes, you've been shut down. Yes, you've been cloistered. Yes, you've been isolated. But that is soon to be over. And when it's over, yes, stay healthy. Yes, do smart stuff. But yes, do some breakthrough stuff that no one ever thought of before.
Well, and I was going to say to that end, this has revealed a lot of things to us, primarily many things that we needed to know. Who knew before this? I certainly didn't. Mark didn't. That 99% of our pharmaceutical drugs are made in China. Who knew that all of our Advil's made in China? Now we're learning that so many of the critical products we rely on for healthcare, basic supplies, all of these things come from China. I just read an article yesterday where Spain received the second batch of these tests, these COVID tests from China, and it's the second batch that's completely faulty and useless. So what it does is gets us thinking, and it's time for us maybe as Americans to say, how can we take some of this back? It's our responsibility to take care of our country and take care of each other. How can we participate? The cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows these supply chains are going to come back. They're going to come home. Manufacturing is going to come home in a big way. So how can we participate in that? Who do we know? What could we do? How do we investigate those opportunities and become part of this amazing resurgence that's going to happen for sure in manufacturing, supply chains, and all kinds of things? This could be the greatest time, the greatest resurgence America's ever seen. And Mark always talks about how after every recession, we've always come back so much stronger. That's going to happen again, but we need every single person. We need each one of you to think about your role, because we can all do it. We don't need to wait around for someone else to do it. Find out how you can participate in this great resurgence.
I'm sitting here and I'm looking at you and I'm like, wow.
So let me do it real quick, just so you got it, if you don't mind. Let me hit on it real quick, but say 1898, we had the biggest depression in America, and a guy wrote us out of it. Wallace Wattles wrote Science of Getting Rich, and 4 things evolved. You all know them. the automobile came out with Henry Ford. You got Edison came out and created electricity, the light bulb everyone thinks about, but they forget about electricity, and that's a bigger one. And then obviously the third one would be the airplane with our friends, the Wright brothers. Well, then the next depression is 29 to 39, and the guy who wrote us out of it wrote Think and Grow Rich, sold 100 million copies, but wrote all the FDR chats, nothing to fear but fear itself, confront your fears and make it disappear. Well, we think we're helping write it out with Ask, and you have a book in you, because we're going to have to think through new stuff, and everybody's got time to think now. So if they go to our website, we'll tell them about the book and our seminar, so they can spend this time writing a book and doing some good that they didn't know they could do. So we do this breakthrough, because what happened in 1898 is the economy went straight up. Well, what happened after the depression, the Great Depression, the economy went straight up. We're saying the economy is going to go hockey puck up, but you've got to be awake. You've got to be ready. You can't get lazy. You can't get slovenly. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to take self-initiative to action. I know I'm being dictatorial here, but it's out of enthusiasm.
I love it. And believe me, I wish we could talk forever, man. I mean, just to have the opportunity to listen and learn from you is priceless. I mean, so the people who get to spend time and listen to you, whether it's here or in any other format, I highly recommend that. Both of you have written a couple of books together, and your insight and advice is just, it's priceless. Yeah, I mean, it's great when you can, so kudos. Thank you so much for being with us today. Is there anything in closing that you'd like to impart with us?
Yeah, I just would like to encourage everybody to stay in touch with us. We love people. We love to stay in contact. So, of course, Mark on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Mark Victor Hansen, of course. And then I'm under Crystal Dwyer Hansen. So please connect. Let's stay in touch. Also, YouTube, we're putting out more resources. I'm a transformational life coach and clinical hypnotherapist. So I'm going to start doing giving some more resources on YouTube because I think people need that, a little bit of guided meditation and just guidance to get through this, to come out stronger and smarter. So we're going to be putting some of that stuff up on YouTube and all over the place. So please just connect with us, stay in touch, subscribe to our YouTube channels. And let's do this together, right?
Right. And I want to add that, I define success as the fulfillment of your destiny by asking. So I'm going to ask you to go to YouTube. We're going to show you all these breakthrough technologies that are coming fast. You can't even start to believe it. We're in the most loomingly exciting time ever in history, Ron.
I absolutely love it. And I love the mindset. It really comes down to how you view things. Either you can be, sit down and just watch Netflix and eat Doritos all day and develop type 2 diabetes and then blame the economy or blame somebody else for your issues, right? No. But, I love it, and I'm fully on board. I'm going to go buy that book by the end of today, and I'm going to send you a link. I want to be a part of the group going forward, and I recommend all our listeners do too. Is there a timetable on that? Because this video is live right now, but I'm also going to be putting it up on YouTube and many other social media platforms. Today we're in April 2020. If somebody buys the book in June or something, is that
we'll still honor it.
We're going to do some rolling ones. So we're going to launch the first one after the official launch of the book. It's on pre-sale now, but it launches next week on the 28th. So it's a good time to go get it, and because it'll be shipped out after that, and then we'll do some rolling ones. So we'll schedule the first one after that. We'll notify everybody. We want to let as many people come in as we can up until the launch, and then we'll have the first one after that launch, and then we'd like to do a couple of others too.
Yeah, we want never-ending success for our friends.
You guys are amazing, man. I'm so grateful that you spent time to us today, and all the listeners. I don't know if they even have a clue how blessed they were to have you.
Thank you. We're just honored that you'd say such a thing. Look forward to seeing you again and doing this again, please.
You're the best. Thank you, Ron. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you. You guys have a great day. I'm going to end the live now.
Thank you.